Hi, this is the Mad Bard. Welcome to an episode of Wild Reading. Today, we have one of the most influential books in the literature world. A very old text written in the Arabic language and translated into a lot of languages with a very interesting story. And let's see how the story came to life. Back in the time, in the 1700s, Antoine Galland, and I hope I just mentioned his name correctly, Antoine Galland actually was in the Middle East. And he made a lot of friends there, and he was one of the Orientalists. He studied a lot of the Arabic language and about its people, their culture. When the time came, he had to go back to France. But when he actually went back, he took a lot of books and scriptures and texts with him. So he wanted to translate them into the French language, from Arabic to French. There, he discovered that some of the papers he actually got with him has 7 tales of a certain sailor. He said, I will translate it and let's see what happens. And thus came the 7 tales of the famous character Sinbad. Yes, he was the first person to translate the 7 tales, the 7 adventures, written in a humorous way to express the sails of a person going from Baghdad all the way to different places in the world as a merchant, and going through some strange experiences, some of them funny, some of them scary, but by the end they are all entertaining. He didn't expect they will succeed and the stories will be loved by a lot of people. He just translated that because he liked the stories and he wanted to achieve a certain social status in the French society. So by translating the books he actually had from Arabic language to his French language would actually make him someone important in the cultural life of France in general. So the point is, in the following weeks, he found a lot of people knocking on his door, telling him, where is the continuation? When are you going to publish the rest of the stories? Like, they loved Sinbad to the point that they wanted to translate these books to another language and then spread to a lot of languages from the east, west, north, south. Everybody wanted to read these stories of Sinbad and the Arabian tales in general. After he discovered that everybody loved it and they wanted more and more, he sent to his friends in Syria, told them, I need more of the folk tales and the stories that you have so I can translate it into French because people would like to know more about this. And what happened is that they sent him a lot of the stories that can be considered folk tales in Syria and the Middle East in general, where I live. There started what we all know as Arabian Nights. Book after book after book, he translated about 11 volumes of tales that everybody knows as Arabian tales. Now here comes the idea that everybody wanted to know about the Orient or wanted to know about Arabs. He goes to read this book. But the strange fact about it is that these tales don't actually portray Arabs. They just portray the image that's in the mind of the person who drew these pictures and put them with the book. So they actually imagined Arabs dressing in a certain way, walking or talking in a certain way with their own experience. The tales actually interested a lot of people because there were a lot of genres in the same book. You can find horror stories, you can find historical fiction, horror stories, fantasy stories, jinn stories, ghost. Every single type of story you would find over there. It's full of poetry and prose. And this poetry goes along with the story, so you would actually feel it alive. That, like, he's giving you the situation, he's giving you the story, and at the same time, he's showing you how did this poet come up with these lines. So he's showing you the story behind the verses. And that's what actually got people a lot of interest in the story itself. Another thing, people started translating the books from Arabic to other languages also. Because this is the only text that whenever you want to translate it to whatever language you want, you have to go back to the Arabic text. These stories become of great value to both the whole world, but they connected that to the Arabs. So this kind of book made everybody look at Arabs through it. Some people fell in love with the stories and fell in love with Arabs just because of these kind of tales, but to tell you the truth, they are not Arabs. And here we come to the origin of the stories. If you read through the whole book, you will see that the events themselves start in Baghdad, then they go to other countries in the world. And we have the names of some of the true kings and kingdoms and sultans that actually exist in the book from different countries, but they are not all Arabs. Even if you read the stories, you would find that every single story has its own style, has its own characters, and it's in a different place. So there is no way one person lived through all these ages or even read through all that history to just come up with the tales of the Arabian Night. So what comes to your mind is that the Arabian Night is the work of more than one author. So it's a group of authors. And to tell you the truth, it's just a group of fairy tales and a group of traditional tales and folklore. But where did that come from? To begin with, it came from India. So we have a lot of stories that came from India. Then we have stories from Persia. So we have Persian stories, Indian stories. Then we have stories from Arabian folktale. What happens is this, they were all connected in one book. Or if you actually were able to take a look at the original text, the first text of the Arabian Nights doesn't include Sinbad in it, by the way. And the stories of Sinbad that our author translated into French weren't even included in the 1001 Nights. But since he's the first person who translated these works, and they started with Sinbad, the character that everybody loved, and you saw a lot of TV shows, movies, series, anime, all of them created only with this character. So what about the other characters? We have tons and tons of characters. So from fantasy, from jinn, from humans, ghosts, angels. So we have a lot of things. It's just the only work of fiction in the world that has all the genres in it and has all types of characters at the same time. And this is really interesting. Can you read it as historical fiction? Yes, because there is some part of these stories are real historical fiction. Can you read it as fantasy? Yes, there are a lot of elements of fantasy in this book. Can you read it like horror? Yes, there are a lot of horror stories. Can it be fun? It was supposed to all be fun stories transmitted orally. So I believe it was just oral literature from India, Iran, and the Arab countries, especially Middle East, all connected together to make up one long story narrated through 1001 nights. And here come why do we call it 1001 Nights. Now the first book that was translated in France was called the Arabian Nights, and this is not a wrong translation, but we as Arabs came up with another title to call it 1001 Nights because these tales were narrated in 1001 nights. Back in the time, we have one king called Shah Zaman, and that king, one day he went hunting because that was kind of the sport at that time, to go hunting. One day when he went hunting, he forgot something and he had to come back to take it. When he came back to take it, he found his wife sleeping with his servant. He killed both of them, but the life became darker for him because he thought, if I can't keep my wife in order, how can I be a king, a sultan to this kingdom? So he left to go to his brother Shahriyar. His brother had the kingdom that's beside him. So he went there to spend some days. He never talked to anybody, never wanted to connect with anybody. He stayed in one castle, ate there, never contacted anyone. Now his brother Shahriyar was also trying to make him talk. Shahriyar was trying to make his brother tell him what's going on, because it's really interesting how a king would actually isolate himself and never talk to anybody. Of course, there is a certain secret. The brother, Shah Zaman, never wanted to tell Shahriyar, his brother, his king brother, about what happened. But one day, Shahriyar left for hunting with a group of his friends, and Shah Zaman was looking from the window of his castle. There was a river. Now, at that day, he saw something that blew his mind. The queen, the wife of his brother, came out with 99 maidens. These 99 maidens with the queen, they made up 100 women. Then came another 100 servants. Then she clapped and called Mas'ud, and Mas'ud came. A black, strong, muscular man like Khal Drogo. They started smashing. 100 men sleeping with 100 women on the riverbank. Shahzaman, when he saw that, it blew his mind. What insanity do I have here? But at the same time, he thought that my wife just cheated on me with one man. So what happened to me is nothing compared to what happened to my brother. His wife is cheating on him with 100 men, and she's letting every single maid have intercourse with every single servant. So he cheered up. He said, what happened to me is nothing. I can actually relax. It's not a big deal. But I have to tell my brother in a certain way about it. But if I tell him about it, he's going to kill me, because he's not going to believe that his wife is actually cheating on him, especially that Shahriyar is a very strong man and very strong sultan. But he agreed to do it like this. He told his brother, I want you to pretend that you're going to hunt. But at the same time, I want you to hide in my castle and see the scene that I saw. Especially that Shahriyar told his brother, what's going on? How did you cheer up? How did you open up? How did you come and talk? He told him, okay, I am going to let you see what I saw. Now pretend that you're going to hunt, you're going for hunting, and come hide in my castle and you will see what I saw. The next day, Shahriyar, as the Sultan, told everybody, okay, I am going hunting and I will go back by sunset. And instead of going hunting, he sent the team away and went back to his brother's castle, the one beside his castle. There he saw his wife coming out to the riverbank, calling the maidens, calling the servants, and went on smashing. Very big treason, very dangerous and mind-blowing and shocking. And he said, what the hell is this? After he saw all of this, he ordered all the maidens and servants killed, and he already killed his wife also. But what he told his brother is that, how can we be kings and sultans if we can't even control our wives? And this is happening behind our backs. Let's leave our lands and go travel. We no longer belong here. Let's leave. On their way, they get into the desert. They come close to an oasis. There, they wanted to rest. While they were resting and drinking some water, an ifrit comes out, a type of jinn, a ghost, came out of the water. A jinn came out of the oasis. A jinn, or ifrit as they call it, came out of the oasis. They actually escaped into the tree and hid on top of a tree. Fortunately, the jinni didn't actually see them. But what happened? He wanted to rest and sleep. When he slept, they found out that he had one big box on his shoulders he carries all the time, and he sets this box aside when he goes back to sleep, when he wants to rest. Now, when the box was open, they found out one of the most beautiful women in the world. She told them to come down. They went down to see her. She told them, this jinni, this ifrit loved me. He kidnapped me on my wedding day, and he said that nobody touched me and nobody will touch me but him. But I have been cheating on him every time he sleeps with any man I find in my way. And I slept with 998 people. And I want both of you to sleep with me right now, one by one, so you can be 999 and the 1,000 men I cheated on this jinni with. So they slept with her and they gave her their rings, because every man she sleeps with, without the knowledge of her jinni, she takes the ring and puts it in her box. The box is full of souvenirs from her lovers she cheated with. After they did that, they gave her the rings and left. And they said, what happened to us is nothing compared to what happened to this jinni. He is stronger than us, he is greater than us, and he managed to kidnap her on her wedding day, and he has the most beautiful woman in the world, and yet what happened to him never happened to us. So what happened to him is worse than what happened to us. Now they cheered when they saw that what happened to him is really worse than what happened to them, and went back to their kingdom. Now there, Shahzaman went back to his own homeland, to his own kingdom, to rule it, while Shahriyar made a very dangerous decision. He said, every single day I will marry a woman, sleep with her, and when sun rises I will kill her, because I don't trust women and women always betray me. Every single night he sleeps with a woman, and every single day he kills her. So he killed a lot of women in his own kingdom, and the situation was disastrous. He had one minister. The daughter of this minister is called Shahrazad. She said, I will go and be the Sultan Shahriyar's wife this time to protect all other girls and women from his evil doings. I will take it upon myself to be the last one to die on his hands. Now, actually, the minister was really scared because his daughter was so beautiful, and at the same time, she read a lot of books, she read a lot of history, she is a prodigy, she is a great storyteller, which is something he actually didn't know, that she is going to use this privilege of being a storyteller to tell the stories to the king. She goes to the king, he marries her, sleeps with her. At that time, she made a deal with her sister, Dunyazad, to come visit her and tell the Sultan, Shahriyar, that I need to see my sister for the last time before you kill her in the morning. The king has mercy and tells her, yes, I will let you see her and talk to her. At the same time, in the bedroom, Shahrazad's sister asks her to tell her a story since they are at night. And waiting until daylight, she has to tell them a story because she's already slept with the king. The king is going to kill her when the sun rises. So why don't you tell me a story? I want to remember you with a story before you die. Shahrazad said, if my king allows it, I will tell you a story. The king says, why not? Why not enjoy a good story? Here, Shahrazad uses her great craft of storytelling to tell amazing stories of love, lust, fantasy, horror, adventure. Every single type of story you might hear about, every type of folk literature, of oral literature transmitted through history is written. And here, when it comes to narrate all the stories that you see in 1001 Nights, she would stop the story in a certain stage before she finishes it. She never finishes a story in the same night. And this is why he keeps her alive till the next night so he can hear the story. Shahrazad is a very great storyteller. And by the way, the king cannot imagine killing her without knowing what the story is. The king Shahriyar keeps postponing the death of Shahrazad night after night after night, just to hear the amazing stories she tells. And every time when the time comes to kill her, when the sun rises, she stops telling the story so she can save her life for the next day. Day after day after day after day, 1001 nights pass. During all this time, Shahrazad told the amazing stories of fantasy, horror, magical realism, stories about worlds and countries and people from all around the world, all to her king, and saved all the women there. By the end of the tale, when she runs out of stories, she already has 2 kids or 3 kids from the king. She is already his wife. She grew on him. She loved him so much, but he already loved her so much, and she became a crucial part of his life. So at the end, he decides not to kill her and keep her alive. Everything in this story that I told you right now came to encompass a wide range of tales, hundreds of tales, 11 volumes. And let me tell you this, it includes strong language, because the people who wrote the stories at that time enjoyed the folk tale as it is, so they didn't actually use any type polite expressions. No, they give you this, they gave you the raw truth as it is. And that's the beauty of it, because it told you how the people at that time thought. If you liked what I told you about, I would hope that you go and read this tale, because the books have philosophy, poetry, prose, stories of fantasy, stories of every other genre that might interest you. It's a very light reading and a really page turner. Once you start reading the first page, you can never let it down, and you keep reading and reading and reading, because every single tale takes you to another world. And by the way, reading 1001 Nights is like sitting in a cafe around an Arabian storyteller listening to a story after story after story after story, where every story takes you out of a world to another world, and they might look connected in a certain strange frame. The tales and the wisdom in the tales that exist in these stories, with their magical elements, with their fantasy elements, with their horror elements, with the characters, the historical characters mentioned there, all of them come together to give you one of the richest texts in the world. The drawings and the paintings you might find in some of the copies there have nothing to do with the Arab culture. Being from the Middle East, I've never seen something like what they actually expected. But this kind of interpretation to how Arabs look like or how Arabs behave was based on this work that's originally from India, Persia, and the Middle East. You can know more about Arabs and about their culture and literature by reading the translated works of the famous authors in Arab culture in the Middle East. But also, if you want to refer to a text that actually influenced the entire world literature with famous authors, go for this one. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening to The Mad Bard. See you next time in an episode of Wild Reading.